Think of the moments when everything came crashing down on you, when you said, "I can't take any more." Who was there? Where were all the people you thought would stand by you? Most of the time, no one is there, and they shouldn't be. Because a person's hardest moments are the ones when they must face themselves alone, like a seed buried in the earth. The seed is in darkness, it's confined. The surroundings are cold, there is no light. But that darkness is not the end, it's where it reshapes itself. In that solitude, it quietly learns to crack. It drives its roots into the heart of the soil, and one day, from that unseen silence, a sprout rises. A human is the same. In their deepest solitude, they break, but that breaking is the beginning of rebirth. That's why solitude is not weakness, it is the space of transformation, because there, no one approves of you, no one consoles you, no one thinks for you. And precisely because of that, you hear your own voice for the first time. Truly, the sense of direction lost in crowds reappears in silence. When a person learns to love solitude, they no longer live in a void they flee from. They live in their own center. Then they realize the value of every bond they form with others depends first on the strength of the bond within themselves. And in that moment, solitude ceases to be something to fear. Because the silence growing inside you is no longer emptiness. It is power, not abandonment but rooting. It is the peace of knowing that no matter how far life throws you, you can always return to that quiet center. When you learn to love solitude, you are never truly alone again. Because finally you have the most real friend by your side, yourself. Today, think of solitude not as the place where people abandon you, but as the day you abandon your dependence on them. You've lived with that dependence for years. You struggled for approval. You tried to be everywhere to avoid being alone, but you never arrived anywhere. Now you won't blame anyone because in this story no one abandoned you. There is only a silence you must face. Look around. There are millions of people, but how many are truly happy? How many are satisfied with the person they see in the mirror each morning? Thousands of friends on social media, but at 3 a.m., when you're crying, how many can you call? This is the greatest lie of crowds. You think they fill you, but they only help you ignore your emptiness. They're no different from drugs. They offer temporary relief, never a lasting solution. This video was made to solve that problem, but be careful. This is not a comforting video. It won't offer soft consolations like, "You're not alone. We're all here." On the contrary, it will hurt, because it will confront you with your greatest fear. You are afraid of being alone with yourself. As Marcus Aurelius said, when a man withdraws into his own soul, he finds his safest refuge. And if you keep watching, you'll have to face that fear. But before we begin, write this in the comments. Today, I choose to be with myself. This sentence is a decision. It represents the moment you stop running from yourself. When you write it, your mind says, "I'm no longer afraid of myself." This small action is tiny for you, but a giant step for your inner world. If you're ready, let's begin. Solitude is not where people abandon you. Our mind constantly whispers the same illusion. Solitude is the painful result of someone leaving us. It's a void, a deficiency, a loss. We see it as a wreckage left by those who walked away. This is the most common, yet most weakening definition of solitude. This view locks us into the role of victim and hands our power to the person who left, as if we are passive beings doomed to be abandoned. But Stoic wisdom flips this picture. Solitude is not where people abandon you. It is where you abandon your blind dependence on them. It is not a moment of loss. It is a moment of awakening. A painful but honest enlightenment when you realize how fragile the happiness you built on others' presence or attention truly was. Solitude is not about an external action, being abandoned. It is about an internal decision, letting go of dependence on others. It is the moment when external supports are withdrawn, and you must stand on your own feet for the first time. At first, you may stagger, because you built your joy, peace, even identity on others' presence. Solitude destroys that weak foundation and forces you to return to your own, to your character, your mind, your unshakable principles. This is not someone leaving you. It is the universe's invitation for you to return to yourself. Mental resilience is built on this very rubble. When you learn to use solitude as a refuge, you understand what self-sufficiency means. The presence of another becomes a bonus, not a necessity. You build your inner fortress brick by brick, a fortress so strong that external storms, people's comings and goings, disloyalty, absence, cannot penetrate it. This is rehearsal for the toughest abandonments, because who can threaten someone who can stand alone, who enjoys their own silence? The threat, "I'll leave," loses its power over you. The fear, "You'll leave me alone," ceases to be your master. Because deep down, you've learned that comings and goings are natural, and your worth is not measured by another's presence. Thus, solitude is not an end. It is a beginning. The place where dependence ends and freedom begins. The sacred space where you leave behind the weak self that feared abandonment, and build a new you so whole that no one can ever truly abandon you. In short, solitude is not where you are abandoned. It is where you break your chains, because every time we tie our happiness to external conditions, someone's decisions or their love, we voluntarily enslave ourselves. Saying "I'm worthy if they love me" or "I'm safe if they stay" is voluntary slavery. Solitude slaps this foolishness in our face. It shows us that trusting the one thing we cannot control, the outside world, is like clinging to a leaf in a storm. True solitude is not helplessly waiting to be abandoned. It is proactively resigning from that dependence. This is a Stoic decision. We abandon our need for their presence before they abandon us. This is not farewell. It is a declaration of power. Your focus is no longer the external world. It is the only fortress you can control, your reactions, your judgments. And when you fortify that fortress, no one outside can hurt, abandon, or diminish you. 2. Being your own companion. That restlessness you feel when alone, that urge to escape, is not solitude's fault. It is the hardest confrontation. That unease is the discomfort of hearing the voice you've been suppressing when the outside world goes silent. The problem is not an empty room. The problem is that the person sharing that room, your own mind, is still a stranger, even an enemy. In society, amid the noise of crowds or constant busyness, knowing yourself is impossible. There you only play roles. Someone who fears being alone with themselves has not yet met themselves. Solitude drops the masks and shows you your naked truth. Who you really are, what your fears are, where your weaknesses begin. You only discover this in honest silence. Many think solitude is a tool to silence the mind, to escape thoughts. But for a Stoic, solitude is not silencing inner dialogues. It is learning to truly listen to them for the first time, to understand what your mind is saying, what anxieties it carries, what irrational fears try to control you. Solitude is where you listen to that inner voice and negotiate with it through reason. Loving solitude is learning to be a tolerable companion to yourself. It is giving yourself the understanding, compassion, and support you expected from others. It is enjoying sitting with your own thoughts. The person who can drink a coffee alone, without needing anyone else to enjoy the moment, has tamed their most difficult companion. You learn self-sufficiency best in solitude. This doesn't mean living alone on a mountain. It means being your emotional center, not looking to others for applause, not desperately seeking someone for comfort, validating your worth from within. This inner strength that blooms in solitude is your strongest armor against the outside world. And ironically, only when you reach this strength are you ready to form the healthiest relationships. You no longer cling to others out of need to fill a void. You choose to be with them because you are already whole. Relationships become free sharing, not addiction. If you don't love solitude, you cannot love others healthily. 3. Mastering your needs. Embracing solitude does not mean becoming coldly detached or denying human nature. We are social beings. We are inclined toward love, connection, and sharing. Stoicism does not teach needing no one. It teaches breaking the tyranny of needs and desires over our soul. Embracing solitude is not saying needing someone is wrong. It is understanding the danger when that need becomes obsession and weakness. The danger begins when a need becomes your master. When you need someone's approval to feel worthy, their presence to calm down, their words to be happy, you have handed over your freedom. That need is now your master, and you are its slave. Seneca defines slavery. If a man is considered enslaved when confined within four walls, is not the body itself four walls? There is no difference between being trapped in stone and trapped in flesh. And as Seneca warns, is not the worst slavery that of those who think they are free? We call this invisible prison, love, passion, or obligation, and think we are free. But this is not love. It is emotional enslavement. Solitude is where we break these chains. In those quiet moments when no approval comes from outside, we learn to find our worth within. We begin to seek peace in our own rational judgment, not in someone else's comfort. Solitude proves we can stand without others. We can feel whole without others. It is training that turns desperate, urgent need into calm preference. When you complete this training, the dynamic changes completely. The desperate, I can't live without you is replaced by the calm power of being with you is wonderful, but I am complete even when you're not here. You no longer approach people like a beggar. You don't beg for love or approval. You share from your own wholeness, without compromising it. A Stoic loves people but does not cling, contributes to society but is not addicted to applause. The ability to be alone makes them a better friend, partner, human, because they enter relationships with the generosity of sharing their fullness, not the anxiety of filling their emptiness. This is true freedom. Being alone is not escaping people. It is escaping being a slave to your needs. It is the art of loving people not because you need them, but because you truly choose them. And most importantly, not letting your inner peace leave with them when they choose to go. 4. Taking ownership of your peace. Putting your peace in someone else's pocket is like handing your house keys to a stranger every day. If they don't show up, you're locked out. If they lose the key, you lose your shelter. If your peace depends on someone saying good morning, telling you they love you, or simply being there, you are a tenant in your own home. And when they leave, you don't just stand outside, you lose the house. This is the most dangerous gamble. Investing all your emotional wealth in someone else's unpredictable tides. People change, priorities shift. Sometimes paths diverge, and they leave. When they go, all that remains is wreckage, because your peace went with them. This is not a loss. It is the natural result of investing in the wrong place from the start. Living with this dependence is like sailing a boat constantly expecting a storm. Is he in a good mood today? Did she misread my message? What if he doesn't love me anymore? These fears gnaw at the mind. This is not peace. It is the opposite. Constant alertness. Hostaging your inner calm to someone else's changing mood. Loving solitude is taking back that key. Discovering in that quiet room, when no sound comes from outside, that peace can come from within. Solitude is where you begin building that house from the foundation. The mortar is your own reasoning. The walls are your principles. The moment you can calm yourself without waiting for someone else's comfort, you've raised the roof. This is owning your home. The key is in your hand. No matter how strong the storm outside, you have a place to take shelter. Others' presence beautifies the house, adds light. But it is not the foundation. They come as guests. You laugh with them, share with them, but when they leave, the house does not collapse. The person who learns to love solitude has taken the deed to their peace in their own name. No one can take that peace. No one can leave them homeless. True power begins not when applauded, but when you can stand tall and unshaken in calm solitude. 5. Signing your existence. If everyone in the world forgot you or never knew you, could you still say, I exist and I am valuable? Solitude is your most honest answer to this question. Most of us measure our existence by our reflection in others' eyes. We feel real when someone calls, praises, loves us. Solitude is a hammer that shatters all external mirrors. It says, "They're not looking. You're still here. Now what?" Learning to love solitude is affirming your own existence. It is putting a wet signature on your own existence document. I don't need another's approval to be worthy. I don't need another's witness to exist. In solitude, you learn to draw your value not from others' applause, but from your character and conscience. This is the greatest independence from external noise. Someone who runs from being alone with themselves has never learned to love themselves, because they haven't listened, understood, or made peace with themselves. Such a person, even when they think they love others, doesn't. They're just trying to fill a void. They use another as a shelter, a drug, to escape the terrifying silence within. This is not love. It is dependence, a search for an echo. A Stoic knows, you cannot truly love anyone without loving yourself. Someone who cannot be happy alone with themselves brings constant lack and demand into relationships. They silently whisper, "Make me happy, complete me, validate my existence." But real love is the free sharing of two whole people, not two halves desperately clinging. Loving solitude makes you that whole person. Affirming your existence is not passive waiting. It is active action. It is how you treat yourself when alone. Respecting your thoughts, being honest with yourself, approaching even your biggest mistakes with compassion, being able to enjoy a walk alone, celebrating a success just for yourself without needing to tell anyone. Solitude is the art of being your own closest friend. Therefore, the one who fears solitude actually doubts their own existence. But the one who embraces solitude affirms their existence most unshakably. And only someone who affirms their existence so deeply can love another freely, without expectation, and truly. Because now they have something to give. They are not in need of taking. 6. Lost in noise, born in silence. Imagine your mind as a room with a television always on, blaring with others' voices, your parents' expectations, friends' advice, society's judgments, your boss's demands. The noise is so loud that you forget you even have a voice in that room. Solitude is pulling the plug on that television. At first, the silence feels terrifying, empty, like punishment. But as your eyes and ears adjust, you realize there's something else in the room, your own voice. Because a person slowly disappears in crowds. Without realizing, we become who others expect us to be. We laugh at what they laugh at. We want what they approve. Our identity becomes a thin varnish of others' opinions, covering our true color. In the rush to please others, we lose our center, what we truly stand for, what we truly believe. We become nothing but an echo. Solitude is the painful but necessary medicine that reverses this loss. In that silence, when all external voices stop, we are left with ourselves. The varnish cracks, the masks fall, the question, "Who am I?" stands unavoidably before us. This confrontation is not punishment. It is purification. It is where we see the gap between who we thought we were and who we truly are. This is where the mind is reborn. This is not a painless birth. Facing your truth, seeing your weaknesses, stripping away the comfortable identities you wore for others, takes courage. But when you show that courage, you learn to act not by others' noise, but by your inner compass. You discover your values, your truths, your voice. This is rebirth. Because now you are not an echo, you are a voice. Crowds consume. Solitude nourishes. In crowds, you constantly spend energy outward, understanding others, adapting to them. You slowly deplete. In solitude, that energy turns inward. You repair yourself, listen to your mind, nourish your soul. The place you thought was empty is actually where you refill. Therefore, solitude, though it may seem like an end, like abandonment, is actually a beginning. It is where you break free from the crowd you were lost in and return to yourself. The sacred space where the weak, echoing self dies, and the strong, authentic self is born. Solitude takes you from the crowd's hands and returns you to yourself. 7. The richest poverty. When was the last time you sat in a room full of laughter and felt an icy void inside that the laughter couldn't reach? Surrounded by people, conversations flying, but feeling invisible, unheard, utterly alone. This is the pain 1,000 times heavier than physical solitude. This is what Stoics call mental poverty, being nothing while surrounded by everything. Because being physically alone, sitting in an empty room, is just a neutral state. We give it meaning, making it terrifying or peaceful. But feeling alone in a crowd is the soul's most painful contradiction, like sitting at a feast and starving. You look for the solution outside, but the problem is inside. This is the soul's poorest state. This poverty is born from desperate dependence on the outside. We feel lost in crowds because we have no inner center. We scramble for approval. We wait for someone to see us. We pray someone fills that void. But no one sees, because we don't see ourselves. Loneliness in a crowd is a painful confession of how disconnected we are from our inner voice. Learning to love solitude ends this mental bankruptcy, because it is building a homeland within yourself. When you make peace with your silence, befriend your thoughts, you have built that inner homeland. Now you take away the crowd's power to define you. You need neither applause nor fear silence. This changes everything when you return to that full room. You no longer go as a beggar to fill a void. You go as a king to share your inner wealth. You no longer scramble to be seen, because you have already seen yourself. You connect with others, but it comes from free choice, not need. Loving solitude is the greatest insurance against this poverty. It is discovering the wealth of self-sufficiency. The moment you stop feeling alone in a crowd, you are home, wherever you are. This is the transition from the richest poverty to unshakable wealth. 8. Being a guest in your own mind. The greatest burden is the man who is a burden to himself, says Seneca. This is solitude's most ruthless mirror. If the moment you're alone, you reach for your phone, feel the urge to call someone. If silence feels like torture, there is only one meaning. You are a burden to yourself. Boredom in solitude is not lacking things to do outside. It is lacking someone to talk to inside, within your own mind. This is mental poverty. This poverty is not measured by money in the bank. It is measured by how dependent your mind is on external stimulation. Like a plant that only gets nutrients from outside, its roots are weak. When stimulation, music, series, social media, conversation, stops, the plant wilts. The mentally poor person wilts in silence. Boredom is the alarm of that wilting, the signal that inner resources are depleted. A rich mind has its own roots. It feeds on silence. Being alone is not an end for it, it is a beginning. The moment when thoughts suppressed by noise surface. A rich mind takes an event, turns it over, extracts a lesson, recalls a memory, reevaluates it, questions its own principles. It is not an empty warehouse waiting to be filled from outside. It is a self-sufficient, constantly working factory. A rich mind knowing how to converse in its own silence. This is deep contemplation. Discussing with your conscience, facing your fears, discovering your wisdom, an inner dialogue. Being able to say, this is who I am without needing others to tell you who you are. This is being a guest in your own mind and enjoying what you see there. The person who can do this is with the most interesting person in the world. For them, boredom loses all meaning. Because even in the emptiest room, the quietest night, they have a richer source than the largest library or liveliest conversation. That source is their inner world. So if you get bored in solitude, don't blame solitude, this is a discovery. You've discovered your mind's poverty. This is an invitation to enrich your mind through reading, thinking, questioning. Because loving solitude is not enduring boredom. It is making your mind a place so interesting you'll never be bored for a lifetime. 9. From murky water to clarity. Think of the deepest corners of your mind as a lake where the most precious jewels lie. Who you are, what you want, what is right, your core values. Crowds are hundreds of people constantly jumping into that lake, stirring the water, kicking up mud from the bottom. Constant motion, constant noise, constant turmoil. In that murky water, you cannot see the bottom. You cannot find those jewels. You only see the foam and blur on the surface. Crowds numb the soul this way. They are the easiest way not to think. The false sense of security from belonging to a group, the temporary high from approval. This is comfortable numbness. You don't feel pain, but you don't feel truly alive either. The soul slowly loses its sensitivity in that noise, like a sharp blade going dull. Solitude is kicking everyone out of the lake and waiting for the water to settle. At first, it's hard. The water is still murky, but as you wait, the mud sinks. The water begins to clear. Solitude is the whetstone that cuts through the external noise, dulling your mind and sharpens your inner perception. It sharpens your mind. Now you begin to see not what others see, but what is real. As the water clears, the first thing you see is your own reflection. The you lost in crowds, sacrificed to resemble others. The question, "Who am I?" stands before you with full honesty. You see with ruthless clarity which values are truly yours, which ideas you defended only to please others. As clarity increases, you begin to see the bottom, those jewels. What do I really want from this life? Not the fake goals applauded by society, but what your soul truly desires. And most importantly, what is right. Not the popular wrong followed by crowds, but the unshakable right approved by your conscience, your reason. Most people prefer swimming in murky water, because clarity and sharpness bring responsibility. They require facing your truth. But once you taste that clarity, feel the power of that sharpness, you never want to return to the numbing noise of crowds. Solitude is the clearest mirror that escapes the noise dulling your soul and reminds you who you are. Today we talked about solitude being the place not of those abandoned, but of those returning to themselves. We saw that being alone is not a deficiency, but the beginning of rebirth. Like the seed in darkness, you too needed to be buried in silence, because there you gather strength. Now you know crowds can comfort you, but they cannot heal you. True peace begins not in others' eyes, but in your own center. And as Marcus Aurelius said, when a man withdraws into his own soul, he finds his safest refuge. So do not fear solitude. Choose it. Take refuge in it. Be reborn from it. Because one day when you make peace with silence, you will realize that silence was never empty. That silence was you. Thank you for watching.